This is Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We're in our Capitol Bureau today in Sacramento. We are joined by Dos Williams, member of the California State Assembly, also a candidate for the Board of Supervisors in Santa Barbara County. And sir, a couple of years ago, I live in the Los Angeles area. A friend of ours' daughter, a bit rebellious, 16 years old, she ran away from home. Kids do that. We expected she'd be back a day or two later. We later found out that she had been kidnapped, put into a sex trafficking ring, and was gone for 3 months. It's a miracle she came back, but it was a 3-month hell.
And unfortunately, it's not an isolated case. We are looking at the modern advent of slavery, plague of slavery in our own communities. And many of us have the false assumption, even though much of it comes from cross-border crime and cross-border criminal rings, not all of it, and many of it is much of it is happening in our own communities, and with kids that grow up in these communities.
What's remarkable to me is how many victims are domestic. I mean, you said, of course, some of it's cross-border, but a very significant number is not.
We know of dozens of cases in Santa Barbara and Ventura County of this being local kids. And the really despicable thing is that many of these are being targeted for their particular level of vulnerability.
And I want to talk about that in a moment, but I also want to mention, I understand part of the challenge with regard to Santa Barbara, Ventura, Los Angeles, Orange County. What you see I'm doing is I'm going south because right through those counties is a freeway. And it's a freeway that takes you all the way up the state into Oregon, into Washington. And so a lot of these kids are being trafficked right along that 1 PCH or 5101, whatever it may be. I mean, that's the problem with these coastal counties.
That's right. They're being recruited from places of vulnerability, like homeless shelters, like the shelters for domestic violence victims, or foster youth.
And let's talk about that, because that is your focus.
Absolutely.
Explain exactly what is happening, because it is particularly sinister.
The fact is that many of the youth that are in these kinds of situations, they are adrift. They're looking for something, and they don't necessarily have a parent involved in their lives, and so a trafficker goes after them. A trafficker recruits them and then says that they will get additional bonuses if they recruit somebody else, sometimes even younger children.
And I have learned, sir, that a lot of this recruitment, and you said it, it's happening at these locations where the kids are most vulnerable. And some of these traffickers are literally standing outside the doors of these foster facilities or homeless shelters. They're prey. I mean, they're literally acting as predators, and their prey is walking out at their most vulnerable moment.
That's right. And these things involve a lot of mental manipulation, sometimes kidnapping, often enough drugs that someone cannot make a choice for their own. And obviously, anyone who's preying upon children is not preying upon people that can make those choices for themselves, especially if they are drugged, cut off from their parents, and kidnapped.
So a few years ago, California did take a bold move. The voters passed Prop 35, known as the Californians Against Sexual Exploitation Initiative, passed with overwhelming support, 81%, and that did increase penalties for those convicted of sex trafficking, no doubt important, and passed at a time when California was in a tricky situation with regard to its burgeoning, or I should say, expanding prison population. But you're looking to take Prop 35 to another level.
That's right.
Tell me what you're looking to do.
First of all, I want to say I'm really proud of our community for rallying around Prop 35. There was a lot of activism in our local churches and elsewhere in the community to support victims of sex trafficking and to get tougher on these crimes. I come from the viewpoint that it's good that we are in an age that we are reevaluating the lock 'em up mentality of the 90s in regards especially to people who are addicted to drugs or
Right.
other things. But look, there are crimes that we still need to be tough on.
But let me ask you if
And this makes sense to be one of them that is particularly called out.
So what are you looking to do? Because you do have some very specific language. It's your bill, AB 2513.
This bill, while it protects judicial discretion, it allows judges to use as an aggravating factor to add years onto the sentence, whether the trafficker was targeting
Right.
these particularly vulnerable populations, whether they're going after girls or boys that are homeless, that are foster youth, that are victims of domestic violence, or even more disgusting, going after people who are recovering in a shelter for victims of sex trafficking, previous sex trafficking.
And are the victims, do they need to be minors, or would it be any age?
It would be any age. And this is, obviously, it's not just minors. With domestic violence victims, this is particularly the case. And look, some foster youth are not minors anymore.
Okay, there's programs.
There is a especially difficult phase for foster youth after they are aged out foster youth. They may not qualify for the same kind of housing that they did when they were a minor. And this is when many of them are snatched up. They either end up on the streets or in other trouble, or sometimes victims of sex trafficking.
Because you're looking to amend Prop 35, do you need to go back to the voters, or can this pass through the legislature?
No, because it does not contradict anything in Prop 35. If I was trying to weaken Prop 35, it would have to go back to the voters. But because it is additive, it is enhancing it, then it can be passed by the legislature.
So the governor has been a bit queasy over the last few years as it relates to creating new crimes or enhanced crimes that add prison time. Why? As you know, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled about 5 years ago that our state prisons were meting out punishment cruel and unusual because of overcrowding. AB 109 hit. We were sending lower level of offenders down to the county jails. And so he's been vetoing a lot of these pieces of legislation. Now, in November 2014, the voters passed Prop 47, which reclassified certain crimes from felonies to misdemeanors, which may have eased the pressure on our prison and jail population. So is there room now, given that maybe our prison populations are decreasing and jail populations, for new enhancements?
Look, I understand the governor is under a lot of pressure. He does not want the courts to mandate releases that do not have criteria that make sense. And so he is trying various measures to make sense of the requirement to reduce our prison population. We cannot let the pendulum swing too far the other way. In the 90s, it swung too far into the lock 'em up mentality. It is now swinging too far into leniency. We still need to protect our communities, and particularly from heinous crimes like human trafficking, slavery in our own communities. So we should not be lenient on that.
Are the sentences in 35 not great enough?
They have not been in terms of providing a sufficient deterrent for targeting.
I understand.
And I think the real question is, do we preserve judicial discretion? Back in the 90s, when I was against mandatory sentencing acts, the battle cry we use is preserve the ability of a judge to make the call in the moment. We are still asking for that. Now the pendulum has swung the other way. We're forcing judges to do lighter sentences. I believe we still need to let the judge make that call.
His name is Doss Williams. My name is Brad Pomerance in Sacramento. It's Local Edition.
What percentage of human trafficking involves sexual exploitation? 60, 70, 80, or 90%? 80% of human trafficking cases involves sexual exploitation.
It's Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in Sacramento today, and we are joined by Patty Lopez. She is a member of the California State Assembly, and recently the Assembly passed an increase in the minimum wage. The vote was historic. We see that California will be on the forefront of the minimum wage throughout the country, even ahead of New York. Essentially, the minimum wage will increase to $15 by 2022. What do you think about the vote?
It was on the right time to do this. These families are waiting for this increase for over 10, 20 years, and I happily be part of this historical day.
Please tell me about the families, because you represent in the North San Fernando Valley a lot of the families, and so many of us, we don't know them, and I want you to tell us about them.
Well, right now, it's really hard right now with the economy. Family that had all the family, sometimes they had to have two jobs,
Right.
to have a decent budget for the family right now, especially before me, I came to the assembly, I had to have two jobs.
You yourself?
Yes.
You
yes,
had two jobs?
Yes, of course. And my husband working full time.
Wow.
And now I see the benefit in my community as I see it now. The moms can go and work and have a little money to pay for the babysitting.
Right.
The transportation, the programs after school for the kids. Sometimes little increase, it will help a lot of the families.
Now, the increase will hit $15, but that's in 6 years.
Yes.
It's slower. There was an initiative that was going to be on the ballot in November that would have brought the number to 15 1 year earlier. But it's going to be 1050 next year, then 11, then 12, then 13, then 14, and then we get to 15. Is this quick enough?
Maybe it's not enough right now, but it's just the beginning and to start supporting these families. And right now it's like little make the difference. And whether we have it by this new law,
Right.
or that we was put it in the ballot soon.
But it looks like it won't be on the ballot.
No.
I do want to ask you, though, there was discussion
Yeah.
that whether the state should be able to prevent cities from having their own minimum wage laws. And that discussion did not move forward. And so in Los Angeles, for example, Los Angeles's minimum wage will increase to $15 by 2020. Sooner, and you represent significant portions
Yeah.
of Los Angeles.
Yeah, but it's still, the process is not in yet. Like you say, it's going to be another 2 years early.
Right.
But I believe to make it a standard for the state of California,
Right.
it will support all the whole state.
Do you live in or near San Fernando, the city of San Fernando?
In fact, I live in the city of San Fernando,
Okay.
and I represent the city of San Fernando, Pacoima,
Right.
Silmar.
And the reason I ask is, has San Fernando passed its own minimum wage law?
Not yet.
So for residents in San Fernando, your district, they may not get, or they won't get the benefits of Los Angeles's increase.
No.
So do you think that that's a problem?
It is. It is. I feel like we had to give the same opportunity to have the same salary.
So even though you're not on the San Fernando City Council, are you planning to speak with folks in San Fernando? Because, for example, when Los Angeles passed its minimum wage, other cities started to follow.
Of course.
And so is it time for San Fernando to follow?
I believe so. And I'm being really active in the city council. Saying I'm gonna, in fact, soon we're gonna have a meeting with a local business in the city of San Fernando, and maybe it's gonna be the time to discuss this new law.
What do they think? Are they nervous?
The small business are nervous, but at the same way they understand. They understand the need.
What about restaurants? Because that always seems to be the industry that gets the most fearful of minimum wage increases.
It is, but in the same way, at the end of the day, the customers are the ones pay the cost
Right.
for the increase.
So what do you think of that? Because look, you said it, the economy's tight. It's getting better, but it's still difficult. And so is now the time to do something that will cause food prices to go up, restaurant prices to go up?
Well, all the time the prices go up. Everything, the rent is up. And now the salary of the families is not increased yet.
Right.
And it's not going to increase right now. So the drastic that is going to impact to the business.
I want to ask about the vote. The vote passed strictly with Democratic support. No Republicans voted in favor of the increase, as I understand it.
Yes.
What do you think of that?
I wish I can see it, more Republicans see it in the side for the families. I know most of the Republicans are pro-business, and I believe also to support the local businesses. But if the people have more money in the pocket, they're going to spend more money.
Right. What was interesting about those that opposed the initiatives, they were fearful of the increase, but they at least liked that there would be uniformity.
Oh, yeah.
So that didn't seem, though, to push the Republicans in favor of the minimum wage, because at least there would have been uniformity.
You know, it's hard to understand the way the voting.
Right.
But, you know, at least in my end, I had to raise. I wasn't planning to raise and speak about that, supporting the bill.
Did you speak?
Yes, I did.
How was that for you?
It was interesting because, you know, one of the members for the Republican mentioned that referring more to the people that don't speak the language, or they come to family functions and all that, and I feel offended when she mentioned that those people, they're not worth it because they don't have that education to get that increase.
Because, look, you represent the San Fernando Valley,
Exactly.
but you also represent people who may not speak the language as well as others. You know, regardless of whether they're actually your constituent, it's a very unique situation that you have.
10 million immigrants in the state of California I
Right.
represent. And for some people say that you had to be well educated, had a master's degree or
Right.
credentials, you know, and you're not worth than $50 an hour. That's mean insulting for my community. That's why I feel that it was my duty at the time to speak out on the bill and support the bill.
So how does it make you feel that you are that representative for, I mean, look, there are many people who are either immigrants themselves, but there's something unique about you.
Well, in my case, I represent the moms. I represent the people. They're not maybe not so active in the political arena, but they're being paid their dues like myself. I've been in this country for over 40 years.
Right.
I've been working really hard to provide for my family, be a good citizen, and now I had the opportunity to be the voice for them. And I will be the voice for them. I will stand for them. I'm gonna be inside to make sure the people, especially when we have this discussion on the floor, they need to hear something from Patty.
She is Patty. She's Patty Lopez. She's a member of the California State Assembly. I'm in Sacramento. Brad Pomerance, local edition. This is Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in Sacramento, our Capital Bureau. We are joined by Judy Lynn. You know her well. She was at the AP for years, and now she is a reporter at CalMatters, calmatters.org. If you love long-form reporting, you got to read this publication. It is outstanding. And congratulations on your new job.
Thank you so much.
I'm really excited for you, especially as a reader of the publication. And I want to speak out one of your articles that came out recently, The Price of Education. I love that play on words because you don't know where you're going to go with the title. And I want to get a sense from you, what's your perception? What did your reporting tell us about how California is spending its public dollars for public education?
Yeah. Well, spending is definitely up. During the recession, it was devastated. You had tens of thousands of teachers laid off or at least received pink slips.
Right.
So created a lot of angst. And that drove in large part to the tax increase of 2012. It was championed by Jerry Brown, known as Prop 30.
Right.
And so now with the recession and that extra money, we're back up to a level that is what it should be. If you look at the chart, it keeps going up.
Right.
And so that's a great relief for public schools.
So we look at 2011, arguably kind of the trough, the bottom. And from that bottom point, you tell us that spending is up about 50%. We're now spending close to $15,000 per pupil, which seems like a great number. But if we compare ourselves to our friends in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, we're not close.
No, we're still in that bottom third rung when it comes to per pupil spending. We just are not there. We're moving up, but we're still, if you think about California as the largest, most populous state, we're definitely not there.
At the same time, we know that a lot of that funding is as a result of Prop 30. You said it. The voters were generous in 2012. They passed Prop 30. Now, Prop 30 had two elements to it. It had the sales tax increase, and it had the increase on, we'll call it the wealthiest of Californians. The sales tax increase is set to expire this year, I believe. The one on the wealthiest Californians in a few years. What does your reporting tell you about whether we're going to see an extension of both, either, or neither?
Yes. So right now there's a coalition of education groups and healthcare groups, and they are out collecting signatures. They hope to pass on the November ballot.
This November.
This November, we'll be voting on taxes again for schools and the rest of the budget. And it only pertains to the wealthy. They kept the wealthy, but not the sales tax.
Now, what about the governor on this? Because the governor has been very clear this was a one-shot deal. When he got elected in 2010, he said, if I want a tax increase, I'm going to you, the voters. And he did, and the voters said yes. I mean, arguably, he could go back again. I mean, he wouldn't be breaking that promise. Do you think he'd be willing to at least endorse a continuation through, I guess it's 2030, on the tax for the wealthiest?
Yeah, he has not indicated. There have been maneuvers by the coalition to make the extension appealing to him. I think their thought is at best he will abstain, at worst abstain, and at best endorse.
So what do you think? I mean, you know the governor, you've met with him. What's your sense? Again, no inside information, not a thing off the record, but do you have a sense of where he is?
The way he has articulated it is that he crafted it as a temporary tax. And if you think about it, he's been championing other issues. If you look to the November ballot, he has criminal justice on his mind. So it's hard to say.
So let's talk about what would happen under various scenarios. You talked about it in your article. If there is no extension and we hit a recession, the amount we would spend would be about at the level we spend next year in 2019. But if there is an extension and no recession, it would be 10 to 12 billion more.
Yes.
Is that significant? From 71 billion to 83 billion?
Yes, very much so. if you think about inflation, just keeping qualified teachers, all of that takes money. There's been a big push toward Common Core, and that's requiring schools to invest a lot in new technologies.
I want to talk to you about teachers, Judy, because here we are coming off of all those pink slips. And now what I am hearing up and down the state as I travel and speak with school board members, they are very concerned about a teacher shortage. A shortage of teachers, and you talked about this in your article. You know, we're providing them with raises, we're providing bonuses, but yet we are at serious risk of a teacher shortage in California.
Yeah, and that it is a challenge. I think that you'll see in this legislative cycle some lawmakers try to tackle that issue. And the Legislative Analyst's Office, they're the nonpartisan budget analysts, they are pointing out a acute shortage of math and science teachers. That's been a perennial problem, and that's an opportunity for the legislature to address.
But the flip side is, look, if we have more money, does all this money need to go to teachers, or a majority of it? What about money in the classroom? What about money for iPads? What about money for schools that need new air conditioning or new athletic fields? It feels like there's a tremendous tension now between salaries and the desire to avoid a shortage, and then 21st century education.
Yeah, if you look, I guess I would use Jerry Brown's plan. When he did funding reform, he basically said, I want to direct more money to the disadvantaged students, the poor, English learners, and foster children.
Can we talk about LCFF? Because that is a revolution. It really is. The way we are funding education, no more well, not no more, but almost no more categoricals. And local districts are now able to decide how they want to spend their money. What have you learned on the trail in terms of what districts are doing? Have you had a sense through your reporting?
Very much. They are trying to, I think what's been happening is that they have new freedom that they have never known, to be freed from these categorical requirements. So that in itself is a big
relief.
Yes,
relief.
It's also a challenge when you suddenly are at the control of your own car, and that's been a learning curve.
And you mentioned the goal of LCFF, foster kids, economically disadvantaged, English language learners. I want to zero in on the economically disadvantaged, because we saw the first results come out for the Common Core test. We'll just call it the Common Core test. We can look at ethnicity, that's fine, but we could also look at economically disadvantaged, and those numbers were frightening.
Yes.
I mean, I know it was the first time out. Judy, I mean, they were just awful.
Yeah.
What does that say to you?
It says that maybe Brown is on to something.
Right, well stated. Right.
In reaching, in trying to direct more money. At the same time, he is a big proponent of local control. So he is giving the districts and the school principals latitude in figuring out how to use that money. And if they feel like that it has to be it has to be teachers, then so be it. He's not prescriptive.
I had to ask you about Common Core. So through my work, I'm lucky that I get to go to various state capitals and interview state legislators in various state capitals. You say the word Common Core in some of our sister state capitals, it's as if you said, Lucifer and every Dante's Inferno, member coming down. I don't feel that in California. Maybe I'm missing something. What do you hear about Common Core?
That's exactly right. We have not politicized Common Core in California. And I think that is to Jerry Brown's credit. He embraced Common Core. He got the teachers' unions to embrace Common Core, which was a big move. And then he also did not tie it to teacher evaluation.
Which is a big issue. You'll come back?
Yeah.
She is Judy Lynn. She is with the online publication CalMatters.org. Check it out. I'm Brad Pomerance in Sacramento, local edition.